This week I want to talk about the hot news that has hit the streets, issue 4.2 of the S1000D specification. That's right guys, Michael Ingledew from TDW, and we're going to talk about issue 4.2 of the S1000D specification. But what I thought we would do is, rather than sit in our office, we would go out and about and have a look at some of the local scenery that we have around the beautiful South Downs that we have here in the UK. So those of you that watch this from far and wide, you can have a look at some of the local area that we are lucky enough to have our office in within Chichester. Today I'm in a place called Arundel. That's Arundel Castle and Arundel Cathedral you can see behind me. Still a little bit cold, a little bit windy. Hopefully it's all looking pretty nice on the camera. However, we're here to talk about S1000D issue 4.2. Now what I'm seeing from issue 4.2 is that there's no real kind of eureka moments, there's no real kind of fanfare around issue 4.2, and that is, I guess, why it's called 4.2 and not 5.0, because it's really, there's nothing super exciting in the specification. There are some, as the highlights actually say, some minor tweaks and some editorial changes, but there are one or two interesting things. So on this tutorial we're going to go out and about and around, and we're going to have a look at what I think are some of the key features that are in 4.2, and maybe throw some thought out there on how it might affect you. So please do come and join me on my little sunny tour of the South Downs, and we'll look at some of the features that are in issue 4.2. Okay, we've left Arundel and we have now come up on top of the beautiful South Downs here, and we're actually up on what is known as the Trundles, but when we pan around and show you, this is where glorious Goodwood, the horse racing events, happen every year. But again, Jamie will pan around and give some footage for you to have a look at that. But the first thing I want to talk about in issue 4.2 is applicability. They've improved applicability and they've put some interesting examples within the bike dataset. But the most important thing is they've now introduced some guidance for presentation. Now, the problem I have with this is that many organizations have already decided on their applicability models, have already got their software working, and it's unlikely that they're going to change the way or upgrade the way they work with applicability. But we're going to look at that and the changes within applicability in a future tutorial, and how that materially impacts anybody who's trying to upgrade from 4.1 or any of the older versions of the specification. But so I wanted to say that the first highlight that I found interesting was that they've updated the bike data set, they've introduced some guidance on applicability presentation, and there's a few other things that, again, we will go into more detail on a future tutorial. So we're at the top of Goodwood, we've done Arundel, we've done Goodwood, and we're going to head on down the village here into a place called Singleton, which has got a beautiful little church. We've moved down the other side of the hill. It was absolutely freezing up there. I'm not sure if you picked up the wind. It was a little bit blustery up there. And whilst we were up there, we actually had to rescue a caravaner who managed to get himself stuck in the boggy mud side. So I think if Jamie took some video, he might put that over the top where we actually towed him out with our big TDW mobile and we dragged him out to safety. So we've done our good deed for the day. But what about S1000D? Well, we've moved down to Singleton, which is one of the prettiest little villages that you'll find here in the South Downs, and this is Singleton Church, and it's one of those that they leave it open all the time. So again, we've taken a little bit of footage and you can have a look at that. It's a stunning little church that sometimes on a summer's day you can just come and sit here and contemplate in the church, and it's really, really pretty. But anyway, 4.2 of the specification, they've updated the bike data set. Now the bike data set, we all sigh, and when we see product demos from vendors, we kind of go, oh great, the bike data set. What they've done is they've updated the bike data set to support the new structures and the new display guidance within S1000D. So if you need or want to have a look at the bike dataset, head on over to s1000d.org, download them, and you'll see the new structures. Problem is I'm not sure yet which vendors will be the first to support issue 4.2, because as I've said before, is that I'm not convinced that there is this mad charge of the light brigade rush to support 4.2 for any projects or platforms. I might be wrong, and if I am wrong, please leave a comment below and tell me, yes Mike, we're actually looking at migrating to 4.2. I do know of one large OEM that's looking at 4.2 because they're looking at some of the ICN support, which we're going to talk about at the next location. So 4.2 bike data sets are available, supporting new structures and display guidance. But from Singleton Church, you can just hear a little grate tit in the background there. Speak at the next location. I'm now up on top of something called the Trundles, and behind me in the distance you can see Chichester Cathedral. This is the symbol of Chichester, and it's not far from where our main office is in Chichester city centre. Over on my left hand side is the Isle of Wight, and when we pan round you might be able to see Benbridge, and if anyone knows a guy called Ian Proudfoot, that's where he lives. So you might, if we zoom in on the 4K camera, you might actually see him. But that's there. We've got the Isle of Wight over there, Chichester behind me. You've got Bognor Regis, which is famous for its Billy Buntins, which is not far from where I live. And then over that way, we've got somewhere called France. But I want to talk again about the introduction of a new schema type within S1000D issue 4.2. And this is to do with the ability to add more information to your ICNs. Now, this was quite interesting. I was involved in a discussion recently where the gentleman who I think initiated this change within issue 4.2 explained that this is really about being able to include things like export control to your illustrations or any of your ICN type objects. So this is one of the material changes within S1000D, that you're going to be able to include extra pieces of information within your ICNs that gives you that flexibility to be able to tag information that might be appropriate to a particular customer, a demographic, or even a country. So this will be something that vendors will need to be able to support both in production and in deployment when it comes to filtering information. So that's one of the key changes within 4.2. We're now at a place called Del Quay, and rumour has it that in the old days this little inlet harbour was actually used by smugglers, but how much of that's just local legend, I don't know. But the tide's right out. Normally the tide comes right up to where we are, and it's absolutely stunning here today. There's a couple of guys on the other side doing some digging for their fishing bait, which is they're braver people than I am. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about some of the enhancements that they're saying they made to issue 4.2, and they're saying that they made enhancements to the CIRs and the schedules and references. Now we're obviously going to dig a little bit deeper into those on TDIQ and have a look at what those enhancements actually are. But in the highlights email that came out of S1000D, they're saying that that's one of the highlights. We've made improvements to the CIRs, schedules and references. They're also saying they've made a general cleanup to the specification. Now, of course, this is a constant ongoing job by the guys at S1000D, or the guys that maintain and look after S1000D. There's a whole group of people behind the production of the specification and those that maintain it and contribute to the production of the specification, and they're constantly improving and trying to make the readability and the usability of the specification that much better. And they're saying there's many more features within 4.2 which we will dig into at the next location and on the tutorials that we will continue to do over on TDIQ. Anyway, from a lovely Delkey, we're going to move on to the next location. So we're now on our lunch break, and Jamie and I have stopped at the Royal Oak down in Hooksway. This place is actually, if you Google the Royal Oak at Hooksway, this pub's been around since the 1500s. And if you think about that, that's the time of Henry VIII and all of those great things from English and British history. But I'm having traditional sausages and chips for lunch, and Jamie's having a, what's it, chicken and ham pie. So great old English food. But anyway, if you want to learn more about the Royal Oak, I've just been chatting to the landlord. I come here quite regularly with Claire, and there's lots of history here. In fact, at Hooksway, this was a little hamlet and it was completely wiped out by, I think it was either the plague or something. Again, if you Google it, you can find out. And all that remains is this pub, and it's absolutely in the middle of nowhere. And it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the South Downs. But anyway, back to issue 4.2 of the specification. I want to end this short tutorial, or this short video, on talking about a little bit about business rules. Now, business rules are all, you know, they're the thing in S1000D. Everybody talks about them. And what they're saying, I've got my notes in front of me here from what they said in the release notes of the specification. And what they're doing is they're saying they've introduced a new BRDoc schema. Now, this is quite interesting, and we've got an article coming up in the TDW magazine about the new schema, and that's being produced by Dr. Mike Day, and it's really designed for capturing S1000D business rules. Now, when you think about that, it really causes a bit of a dilemma, because if you are upgrading from an older version of S1000D to a new version of S1000D, and you've already invested in all of your business rules, does that mean you are now going to have to migrate to the new BRDoc schema? I don't know. We're going to have a look at that, and we're going to start questioning that as we move forward. They're saying also that they've improved the readability of the business rules section within S1000D. And as I mentioned on the previous part of this tutorial while we were down by Singleton Church, is that, you know, they've introduced some of the examples within the S1000D bike data set, so you can download that and have a play with that. The thing that I think that's most interesting is that they've deleted a whole raft of business rule decision points and introduced some new ones and clarified some of the language as well in some of the existing BRDPs. And again, if you're going to be migrating from an older version of S1000D to 4.2, that's going to introduce an interesting discussion for you, whether you are going to look at changing and updating your business rules to support the new BRDPs, or are you just going to leave them in there, or are you going to have to revise your business rules as a whole? So probably the single biggest change within the S1000D 4.2 is the improvements to how you work with and how you can produce and how you can reference your business rules. I'm sure that people like Victoria, who wrote her business rules decisions book on 4.1, is absolutely frantic at the moment trying to update it to support 4.2. I'm sure there'll be lots of tutorials and there'll be lots of guidance coming out from various vendors on what you should and shouldn't do with your business rules. Again, we will look at the each individual decision that's been either amended, deleted or added on a tutorial over on TDIQ. But at this point, I'm going to love you and leave you. Leave you with the lovely pub behind me, but I've got a sausage and chips here getting cold, and I'm going to dig in and eat them. So Jamie and I have finished our lunch and we are suitably well refreshed here at the Royal Oak, and I just want to do a quick summary here. You might see some mountain bikes and that flying by, because this is one of those parts of the South Downs where lots of ramblers come in and out and lots of mountain bikers bomb on by. Now, so issue 4.2 is, it's not a wow release of the specification, or at least in my view, it's not a wow release of the specification. There are some key interesting things in there in terms of business rules, in terms of ICN applicability, new sample data sets have been updated and those kind of things. I would be really interested to hear and learn if you guys are actually going to be using 4.2. Are you planning on migrating to 4.2? Like I said, we're going to do some more in-depth tutorials on. There are a whole raft of other things that have become changed, modified, updated and introduced in 4.2. We're going to have a look at some of those introductions, and we're going to look at some of the stuff that might materially affect a project that wants to upgrade. So I hope you found that useful. I hope you found it interesting. Please do share it with all of your fellow professionals within your team. Do subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe to the channel, then we know that the content that we're making is something that you want to watch and you are engaged in wanting to have a look at and watch regularly. Anyway, I'm Michael Ingledew. Massive thank you to Jamie, who came out the office with me today to help me with the videoing. From the Royal Oak here in Hooksway, see ya.